Final item under individual consideration is to consider approving a resolution to adopt a supplemental budget to defray expenses, to authorize additional financing sources, and to authorize budgetary transfers between funds or between spending agencies within a fund for Mesa County, Colorado. Diane, good morning.
Diane Juakowski, Budget Manager. Today I have the last fourth quarter amendment to the 2025 fiscal year budget for Mesa County. This is the final amendment for the year. And on the slide, I have for you a high-level look at the changes that we're making to the general fund. So we do have a little over $500,000 coming in additional grant revenues for the end of the year. We plan to appropriate those grant revenues as well as adding in some unanticipated expenditures that have popped up since we adopted the budget at the beginning of the year. And so we do plan to utilize an additional $652,000 worth of fund balance, and I'll get into that makeup in the next couple of slides.
One question while you're on that overall, does this anticipate expected savings, end of year savings in the general fund?
No, so this is really just the appropriation. Okay. So again, this is going to be going towards some things we didn't anticipate, but we still do have realized savings elsewhere in the budget. So first I want to highlight the grant revenues that some of our departments have brought in since our last amendment to the budget. Our district attorney's office received $350,000 in additional grants, and we will be appropriating those for specific programs within their department. And then our sheriff's office has also received an additional $183,000 in grant funding, which is going to be appropriated towards the appropriate expenditures that it's meant for. We do have some expenditures without accompanying revenues. The largest amendment to the budget is going to be our electric utility costs. We are going through energy performance project upgrades, and that construction is ongoing through 2025. We do anticipate to have fully realized energy savings starting in 2026 to sort of cover some of these utility costs. However, those savings weren't fully realized in 2025, so we do have to amend the budget to make up for that shortfall there. For our natural resources department, the eradication efforts for the Japanese beetle, we did ramp those up going into the end of the year. Increased costs for spraying an additional 805 properties through that program. So we did have some associated costs with that. Our county administration department saw some unanticipated costs for an actuarial study that we did for our health insurance RFP that we did earlier this year to change health plans. And then they also did a community opinion survey, which had some associated costs with that. And then finally, our sheriff's office has, they have overtime totaling $120,000 for wildland fire management efforts. And a good portion of that is covered through state grants, BLM funding, HOA revenues, in the amount of $88,000. They do anticipate that they'll get some additional fire reimbursement, but they don't know the timeline on that. So right now we do have to appropriate additional funds for that overage on that overtime. And then a couple other funds outside of the general fund. So our Department of Human Services, they received $800,000 in additional federal grant revenues than anticipated earlier in the year. So they are going to be appropriating that additional revenues to go towards various programs for client support. In our capital fund, our facilities department received a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy, and this was $77 $1,900 going towards the Long Park light replacement project. We had the expenditures already appropriated for that project, so this is just adding that additional revenue for it. And then finally, we had for our Far Pond Tower, our TV translator site was struck by lightning earlier in the year. And then I think it might have also caught fire, but there was a $103,000 repair bill for that coming out of our insurance fund. And so that repair can be covered through conservation trust funding. And so basically this is transferring conservation trust funds to the insurance fund to pay for those repair costs. Are there any questions about any of the changes that we're making to the budget for the end of the year?
Questions?
Going back to the slide with the energy costs. So for me, looking at that, I'm just kind of trying to surmise. So we had utility costs were an additional almost $500,000 because we didn't have the offset with the energy savings. Whatever the new fixtures, lights, that kind of thing. Is that what we're talking about?
So through the project, we had anticipated a certain level of savings in 2025. That was supposed to be through a combination of things. So electric utility savings. We did realize some savings in natural gas utility. Unfortunately, the construction took longer throughout 2025 than anticipated. So we did not have the level of savings that we had budgeted for.
Okay.
We do know in 2026 that the construction is over. We do anticipate that any sort of savings will be fully realized in 2026. So unfortunately, the timing of when construction was ending and how we had budgeted for it previously didn't quite align with getting those full savings throughout 2025.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
I think that's nature of just budget season. Just for the public, we spend all year with our departments going over their needs, their budget requests. We go through a budget review with our departments. We're just fine tune, hone. And this is all happening with estimated revenues. And so we don't necessarily know what we're getting till the end of the year, until those assessments and tax assessments, everything's finalized. So there is a lot of estimation in that. And then we do give ourselves areas where we can always have that flexibility to come back and adjust. And those are exactly what we're doing today. When we go through 4 of them with 4 quarters, and then we're able to adjust accordingly for what real costs are. And I think it's really fantastic. Local government, we do a good job of being really transparent of what those costs are. So that's what we're doing today. We're just adjusting some of these, like the energy savings. It's just really hard to know what construction is going to look like a year out. So it's just a little bit of estimation, but then coming back and being really transparent throughout the process in those quarters. And then again, any departments that run into an emergency, we can't know when a forest fire is going to happen, or when a really important emergency service tower gets knocked down and burned down. So we're just always constantly being responsive and flexible to the needs of our community. And this is just in real time. And nobody knew the Japanese beetle was going to expand at the rate. And we're just trying to be proactive. And so we've expanded our spray area by 20%. And those costs, you just never know what that's going to look like. And so having this really responsive government in real time is really helpful. But see, these are some of the things that we're having to deal with, wildfires, Japanese beetle, construction costs. But I think we're doing a great job, and the staff has done a great job in presenting the facts to the public in a really transparent way.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, non-reflective of the savings that we'll have at the end of the year. It's just a snapshot, basically third quarter, going into fourth quarter. So hard to get a good feel of where the budget is actually at with just a supplemental, if you're just looking at the supplemental, but all in all, pretty straightforward, simple. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Is there any public comments on this supplemental budget request? Okay. Seeing none, bring it back to the board, entertain a motion to approve this item as entered into the record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Diane.